Welcome to Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where real leaders share the raw truth about the lessons they learned the hard way so you don't have to. Join our host, Layci Nelson, founder of Transcend Leadership Collective and former terrible leader. On this podcast, we invite you to step into the confessional and get real with the messy stories and behind-the-scenes reality of leadership. Let's get to it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. I am your friendly neighborhood podcast producer, Mary Skop, here today with President, CEO, Layci Nelson. Layci, welcome back.
Why, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. We are doing something, obviously, this is one of our world famous Q&A sessions.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to do something a little bit different. If you are a follower, you may or may not be aware that we had a webinar last week and it was very well received. And I just have a sneaking suspicion it was because of the topic, which was steadying the ship, leading through the uncertainty of tariffs. This is just a fact. There is no one side about it. If you are a business owner, if you are dealing with any type of product or anything in that realm, there is a ton of uncertainty at this time regarding tariffs.
Yes. And the massive implications of those, right? I would say not even just tariffs, but consumer confidence, period. It's really hard to make projections when the landscape is just constantly in flux and everyone is hesitant about what the right next step is because the topography of the land is constantly moving. So how the heck do we build a trail when the landscape's always changing?
Right.
That's always the truth to some regard, but I feel like it's time 10x speed right now.
That's true.
So
it sure feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we want to offer is we have no insight as to what the future holds. That's not our
economists.
purview.
Nope.
We are not economists. This is not in our purview whatsoever. But what we can offer to you, dear listeners, is perhaps a bit of a grounding and a path to lead well through the uncertainty. And I also want to just mention before we go any farther that we are dropping the replay of the webinar in our March newsletter, and we will continue to include it in quite a few subsequent newsletters. So
yeah, it's going to be needed for a while, I think.
Yes. I agree. That sounds right. So if you would like to see the replay, which I strongly encourage you to look into, feel free to sign up for our newsletter and it'll land right smack dab in your inbox. So without further ado, Layci, let's talk a little bit about this very particular steadying the ship.
Yes.
During this tariff uncertainty. Give us a little bit of groundwork there. How can we start?
Wow. Every question feels like a wow around this topic. But I think the first place to start is checking in with yourself as a leader. How are you right now? And being really honest with recognizing, am I currently in a dysregulated state? Where we think about that, Conscious Leadership Group has a great video, above the line, below the line. Where are you at when it comes to your central nervous system regulation? And are you at a place where if you are freaking out, the symptoms of freaking out are constant distraction, you're more irritable, maybe your sleep isn't as consistent as it normally is. It can be things like, the example I like to give is, how many of us have had the experience where a piece of our clothing gets stuck on a door handle?
Yeah.
And when we're in a good place, it's annoying, but not going to send us into a rage spiral. But if it is a bad day and my clothing gets hooked on the door handle, instant rage spiral, right? Like,
instant rage. It's like, this is the worst thing ever. And
so mad.
You just about break the door. That's a sign. That's diagnostic.
That is a useful diagnostic. The little things, like, where's our capacity to handle the stuff that normally doesn't shake us so extreme? When those little things start to feel like really big things, that is a good thing to notice in ourselves, to go, oh, maybe I'm not doing as hot as I thought I was doing. Yeah. Short-term memory is also another key indicator. Those are, I'm showing all my cards. Like, those are my two big ones. Do I get angry faster than normal at things that normally I can not really worry about? And is my short-term memory and even just capacity to form sentences, like, am I feeling like I'm walking through concrete? Those are signs for me that, oh, I'm more dysregulated than maybe I thought I was. Or, hey, pay attention, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to acknowledge what's going on, acknowledge your emotions around what's happening and where you're at.
Yeah.
And do not assign a moral good or bad to what you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we like to do, we like to should all over ourselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
I should be handling this better. I shouldn't be so upset. I should know how to handle this by now. I've been at this for 10 years or 15 years or 20. I shouldn't feel this way, right? So we keep these value-laden veneers over our emotions instead of just acknowledging, no, our emotions, they're not good or bad. They just are.
Right.
And not allow that to send us into a shame spiral. I got a rage spiral and a shame spiral happening today. Just where we're at, folks. So
right.
Not sending us into that shame spiral of, and then what happens is we either just say, well, I don't like this, so I'm going to shut it off and just ignore it completely and compartmentalize.
Right.
If that's the way you go, or you go the way of, I'm going to sink so far into it that I become paralyzed by the overwhelm of all of this anger and bad feelings and fighting that I shouldn't even be feeling the bad feelings.
Yeah.
Most of us go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
When we stop moralizing it, stop saying it's good or bad to have the emotion, and can just sit and go, you know what? I am feeling overwhelmed right now. I am feeling unsteady right now. I am feeling really apprehensive and I have some fear around where things might be. And instead of fighting it, just acknowledging it, that's when you can start the process of then regulating and not letting it drive the bus. Because even if you're trying to run away from it, it's still deciding which direction you're going. Right?
Yes.
It's still driving the bus. So it's how do we not let it drive the bus? First step is just be brave, sit with the feeling and stop telling yourself you're good or bad for having these feelings. Just recognize them. Yeah. That's like step one.
It's a big step.
It's a big one. It's a hard practice because it doesn't feel good. It typically doesn't feel good. Although I will say, people who do this, the flip side, where you're like, I don't think I do that. If you're someone who has a hard time celebrating your wins, that's the other side of doing this. If you're like, I don't need praise. I don't need to celebrate wins. I have a hard time celebrating the small wins. That's a good indicator that you probably don't sit with emotion very well.
Sure.
On either side, right?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So like, well, damn it. That's me. You know, like I see myself, what do I do with it?
Right.
And if we're going to be honest, I have not yet encountered a leader who is tapped into themselves that isn't dealing with all of this right now. The ups and downs, the roller coaster.
Yep.
How do we learn how to ride this roller coaster, which now has 14 more loop-de-loops than average?
Right.
There's always a roller coaster happening, but it's even more dramatic right now.
Yep.
How do we learn how to ride it without succumbing to the motion sickness? And what happens next after the recognition? You're like, great. So now what? You know, I'm still motion sick. It's reverse engineering and going, all right, now that I know I'm feeling this, let me back up a step and go, what thoughts am I having that are contributing to this emotion? So how emotion happens in our bodies, the first thing is the outward stimulus, right? For us right now, all the uncertainty and the unknown. Not a thing we can do about it. We're all swimming in the waters. That's the external stimulus. That external stimulus then, and all of this happens in seconds in our brain.
Right.
Even that long.
Oh, exactly.
Breaking it down in these steps. I mean, it's like a millisecond because our brains are supercomputers.
Yes.
Then the next thing that happens is we start to have a thought around this external stimulus. And that thought can be, this is terrible. We're all doomed. There's so much uncertainty. No one really knows what's going to happen. I can't make any decisions right now because I don't even know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. When we recognize those are thoughts that going through our brains, most of the time those thoughts happen unchecked and automatically. And from there, that then creates our feelings we're experiencing. And we just go straight from stimulus to feeling without examining the thoughts. And so if we can go, all right, first of all, totally feeling uncertain and shaky. I'm not going to say I shouldn't. I just am. What do I do with that?
Right.
All right, let me back up. What thoughts am I having? I can't make any decisions right now. Well, let's examine that. Is that true? That's not true.
It's not true. Right. It feels true.
It feels true.
But it is not true.
Right.
Feelings are tricky.
Yes. Yes. It's like, yes, we need to trust ourselves, trust our bodies, trust our feelings, and at the same time, learn how to have discernment in examining The feeling is there because it's telling you something. Tap into what it's telling you and then evaluate what's the evidence. Is that true or untrue, or am I misinterpreting the feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that to say, you go, okay, well, what's the evidence for what I'm saying or what I'm thinking?
Yeah, right.
Two things can be true at once. The evidence can be, I can't make any plans right now. Well, maybe in one area or 3 areas or 10 areas, you can't make any decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But I bet you could find some areas you could make decisions in that are going to be impactful.
Yes.
And so it's reframing the thought to, I have a limited scope of ability to make decisions right now. What decisions can I make?
Right.
And so then simply by opening up that pathway, your feelings are going to respond with less panic and more curiosity.
Yeah.
And then what happens is your brain, instead of just reinforcing why you can't make decisions, because I'm telling you, you can't make decisions. So our supercomputer brain, the programming that runs in the background is dead end. Nope, this won't work. And it just reinforces the reality that we've decided exists. But if we talk to ourselves in a way and go, let me reframe this, it is difficult. I'm not going to Pollyanna this away. It's not wave a magic wand and the circumstances go away. Absolutely not. But if we can reframe what we're thinking about and how we're posing the challenge to ourselves, it gives our brain a different software that can run in the background so that we then have thoughts that come into our mind that are producing the kinds of feelings that are hopeful and aren't just having us feel absolutely frozen or angry or all the different ways our bodies respond to being in crisis. It's okay, let's get curious. What are the possibilities right now? What are the things that we can be deciding? And if you go into that replay, I actually provided 3 different scripts of taking yourself through it and then also taking your team through the exercise of really practical, down to earth ways that you can start to unpack and implement the areas and the places that you do have power right now and that you can get curious.
Yeah.
That you can also at the same time acknowledge the reality of the situation. What an exercise in both ends, right? It's not black or white. It's not either or. It's not sink or swim. We are living in, if there ever was, both end times right now. It is hard. And there are also things we can do to navigate right now.
As you're going through this, it occurs to me how incredibly important and valuable it is to recognize, okay, one of the worst feelings I think you can experience. This is the case for me. So here I am showing my cards. One of the worst feelings ever for me is the feeling of being trapped.
Yes.
I am trapped. I have no options. I am stuck. I'm trapped. That is the worst. But to be able, especially I can see as a leader, to develop the skill set, to develop the capacity to take a moment and realize that I am not as paralyzed as I feel. There are certainly times where this is going to be easier or more difficult depending on the situation.
Right.
Sometimes it really can feel like, wow, I'm looking all around me and I really feel like I'm truly stuck. I'm truly trapped. But I really think that that is the vast majority of the time, unless you are in some horrendously traumatic experience, we're not ever really paralyzed or trapped.
Right.
To be able to develop the ability, the skill set to see that and to impart that to your team, because what you're reflecting towards them, they pick up on that. And if you're freaking out all over the place, they have no reason to not freak out all over the place.
That's exactly right. I mean, that leads so naturally to the next thing is get yourself in order.
Yeah.
You can be transparent and honest. You don't have to lie.
Right.
Don't lie. Do you not have to? Don't do it.
Yes.
And don't make promises you can't keep and don't pretend to know more than you do. But if you are able to steady the ship by being that anchor of calm, your central nervous system is regulated, your team, especially in a position of leadership, your teammates' brains are 10 times more likely to Bluetooth link to your calm.
Right.
If you're steady, they're going to feel a lot safer. It's kind of like if you're on an airplane and the flight attendants are freaking out, you know you're probably going to die.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I love the Bluetooth analogy. It's so true. And as you were referring earlier, this all happens in the brain in milliseconds.
Yep.
And if you're face to face with your boss, this goes back and forth between the eyes in a matter of hundreds of times in just milliseconds. So it's being communicated. Whatever it is, it's being communicated.
Yeah. So choose how you communicate, because you're going to communicate whether you want to or not. It's happening.
Right. Yeah.
I want to turn the tables a little bit, Mary. Speaking from the perspective of, we've had times in growth of our company where I've had to definitely practice what I'm preaching right now, or maybe didn't do it so well. Just really honestly, what are things that made you feel safe and secure? And what are things on the flip side that were like, ooh, from an employee perspective?
Sure.
Please speak to either candidly. I have no secrets.
Yes.
This is Confessions of a Terrible Leader. So here I am.
Yes, it is Confessions of a Terrible Leader after all. Yes. When I think of times where contracts were moving at, shall we say, a glacial pace.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's been plenty of that for a multitude of reasons, not one particular flaw or anything.
Sometimes cash flow is rough.
Yes.
And you got to be smart and figure out how to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
There were many things that steadied the ship for me. Sorry. That was terrible.
I loved it.
One, you were always telling us the truth about where we were. And I trust that. I trusted that then. I trust it now. And like you were saying, you weren't, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Right.
There's no problems whatsoever.
The little dog with the fire everywhere.
Right. It's like, it's fine. This is fine. I trusted you because you were telling us the full truth. This is slow. This is coming in. Like I said, it's not one particular reason. It was just kind of the way the year unfolded.
Right. It was a transition year for us.
Yes.
And a growth year.
Yeah. Right. And so there were many different factors at play, just the balance of cash flow versus the team is getting paid and that kind of thing. You were very transparent about, these are the steps I'm taking to get through this time, because you all deserve to know this is exactly how things stand. And these are the steps that are being taken to get through this. We were all aware of lots of big, amazing things looming on the horizon.
Right.
But it was getting to that point. I trusted in your honesty and your transparency. And even though it felt a bit wobbly and there was so much growth, and you don't necessarily get to choose how the growth happens.
Right.
And what the reality of that looks like.
Right.
We don't get to choose the pace of these things.
Right.
You frequently have to react is a tricky word.
Recalibrate?
Yeah, recalibrate, respond in the moment and try to avoid those knee-jerk reactions.
Right.
I feel like it was weathered as well as it could have been. And even with the growth and some inevitable wobbliness, I still felt grounded. We will always look back on that year as, well, it was very interesting.
Right.
To say the least. And also, you have to trust things, certainly in a negative sense, this can happen, but also in an amazing sense, things can turn on a dime.
Yep.
Things can literally change overnight.
One email, one phone call.
One phone call. So don't freak out. There is so much truth to just continue to show up. Do your due diligence.
Right.
Ride the wave, but things can change in moments. It's like, don't focus on, well, it could catastrophically change. And we all know that. Okay, we're here.
Right.
We have a negative bias.
Everyone's running the catastrophic worst case scenario already.
There is no shortage of that being communicated to us. And we're all born with a negative bias anyway, which, it does help us survive. But at the same time, it's like amazing things can happen in moments.
Yeah.
So stay the course.
Yeah. I think, no one missed a paycheck, just listeners, if you're wondering.
No.
Nobody missed a paycheck.
Yes. Sorry, that was a little...
No. But what I wanted to say to that, I was so transparent and I felt that you guys were trusted enough to ask the question of how much notice can you give us if there does come a time where the gap is just too big? Are we going to know with 10 seconds notice? I liked that you felt safe enough to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And boy, are our listeners getting a behind the curtain peek of the realities of running a startup, right? Running a new company.
Yeah, this was not planned. We just kind of went with it.
Asking those questions. And I had thankfully banked the relationship and the trust that I gave you honest answers and only made promises I could keep.
Yeah.
During times like this, only make promises that you can keep. And the promises I could keep was honesty, transparency, giving you consistent updates, and not waiting for you to ask what was going on. Because by the time you were going to ask me for a follow-up, I knew if I waited that long, there'd already be how many conversations happening that I had no idea about, because that's natural, normal, nothing wrong with that. That's employees talking to each other. That's going to happen. That's part of being a team, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be purview to some of those conversations, nor do I expect to. But I know making sure that I am getting ahead of it in that, hey, I can't just lean on, hey guys, no news is good news. Trust me.
Right.
Like, that's not going to cut it. Even though the trust was there, the trust is going to erode in silence.
Yes.
So it's like, all right, here's the update. This is where it's at.
Right.
This is the plan. This is what we have coming. This is when this contract's going to kick. The first payment's going to land, blah, 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 blah. Giving you guys those updates, even sometimes when the information was, there isn't any new information, but do you have new questions? Right. But keeping that open.
Yeah.
And I think so often in times of uncertainty, we think, oh, we don't want to bring it up as leaders. We're like, we don't want to bring it up. We don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Hence, steady the ship. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to make this worse. They're already talking about it and thinking about it. Like, you not talking about it is not helping you.
Right.
And it's not helping them. So even if the update is nothing new, but do you guys have new questions?
Right.
And just keeping the line of communication open.
Right.
Goes a really long way in helping them to feel more secure. But you have to be in a place, like we said back at the beginning of this conversation, you can be in a place where you can hold that conversation and hold yourself in a space that you are regulated.
Yeah.
Because if I would have went in a dysregulated, I would have lost some of you for sure.
It would have been scary.
Yeah.
Establishing that is the very first, before anything else. Study yourself and learn what you need to learn to be able to do that. Thinking again about that time, I never felt like I couldn't ask a question. That was also something that just felt grounding. Just like I knew I could raise any question.
Yeah.
And that was okay.
And I was going to give you the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Not like a weird, I think of politicians who don't ever answer the question directly.
No,
they just talk around it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Give me a word salad.
Exactly. No non-answers.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just honestly had to say, I can answer 10% of that question.
Right. It's like,
the
I don't
other
fully
90%,
know.
I don't know yet. But here's what I can tell you.
Right. This is what I do know. And really, honestly, most of the time, that's enough.
Yeah.
That is enough to be like, okay, I'm receiving this knowledge and I trust that this is everything there is to know at this point.
This is leaders where you have to be really good at not getting defensive. Because boy, if you have a tendency to drop back on your heels and get defensive when questioned, it is not going to go away. It's going to amplify during this time. We always need to be practicing recognizing what tips us into feeling like we need to protect our ego. And times like this, that does not serve, it typically doesn't serve us well, but it really doesn't serve us well or our teams well. So a lot of times questioning will start and then immediately the leader gets defensive because they feel like they should have the answer. They start shooting all over themselves, right? And really it's coming from a place of insecurity, but what's projected, the intention and impact, right? What's projected is usually anger or how dare you're asking that, or I'm annoyed at you. It does nothing but push your team further or your members of your team further into the what's going on. This just feels like chaos. I hate it here.
Right. So, I hate it here.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Exactly. And there's no better time to practice these things when times are good.
Correct.
And steady. It's kind of like how it's good practice to go to therapy when things are kind of boring and normal and good.
Yes. So you can practice your skills.
Right.
Yes.
And then when things do inevitably at some point, you know, because life is life, inevitably there's going to be a point where, oh, we are in crisis mode once again. Then you're not starting from scratch. the capacity isn't there when you have to start from scratch and you have not had the time and the collaboration to practice those skills.
Get your reps in when you feel good.
Right.
So that when you're sick, you can still do the reps and your muscle memory kicks in.
Right.
You got to build the muscle memory. The best time to build it is before you need it.
Exactly. Wow, that was an adventure.
Oh, it was. I always love these because I never really know where we're going to go. And it's always... It's always so interesting.
Right. I mean, we're very intentional about that in like, I don't want to police this too much. Let's just kind of, we have a general topic, but you know, we never know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the lemon bar epiphany a few Q&As back. Sorry, listener, you're going to have to go find the Q&A with the lemon bars. Again, you just never know what's going to pop up. Yes.
You never know.
Layci, do you have any closing thoughts?
I do. Go download that thing. Sign up for the newsletter because that's going to send you the Zoom link. And when you get that link, you're going to get that. You're going to get a PDF of the slide deck.
Yes. Oh, you get goodies.
Yeah. And that slide deck has tons of actual scripts. And right now we talked a lot in generalizations, partly because I have my short-term memory right now. I'm like, what did I write in that thing? So go pull it up. That's going to give you some really solid, specific examples to how do I host these conversations? What questions do I need to be asking myself? It's the solid tools stuff.
Yep.
That webinar, it's not a infomercial for something bigger later, right? The purpose was we just want to give you something right now because it's hard and it's value packed. There's so much in there that we teach to all of our clients that we're just giving away. So go get it.
Yeah. Like Layci said, it doesn't scaffold into anything else. It's a standalone, completely free access to the slide deck itself with prompts and all of that is invaluable because it's very possible that if you're a leader, you're like, I don't even know what to say and where to start.
This gives you the where do I even start?
All right. That's amazing. Yeah, sign up for the newsletter so you get all of the access to the free webinar and all of the resources that come along with it. It really is just invaluable, especially during these unprecedented, dented times. It's like, right. Just all this unprecedented business. I'm like,
so much and so much noise and distraction right now. Like,
Right. Yes. Exactly. Well, Layci, thank you so much for your time, for going over this incredibly important topic presented in the webinar, kind of breaking it down for us. Listeners, until next time, go manage like a leader. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. If you're feeling brave and have your own terrible leader story that you'd like to share, head over to transcendleadershipcollective.com/podcast to fill out a guest application. We'd love to hear from you. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is hosted by Layci Nelson and produced and edited by Fixation Point Productions. Music is by Leif Olson and Mary Skop from the band The Number of Months. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is a free leadership resource offered by Transcend Leadership Collective. If you are ready to refuse the limits of average leadership and join the leadership revolution, visit transcendleadershipcollective.com to check out our offerings for engaging workshops, strategic planning, and more. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And until next time, go manage like a leader.